Well, hello again, everyone. This is Joyce Davis. I'm PennLive's Outreach and Opinion Editor, and we're letting you in on another editorial board meeting. This one, I think, is going to be most interesting. It's with the newly elected Attorney General of Pennsylvania, Dave Sunday. And I want to welcome him right off the bat, and also to let our readers and viewers know that Attorney General Sunday did meet with our editorial board during the campaign and answered all of our questions. So we thank you for not only being willing to be grilled beforehand, but to come and meet with us afterhand. Welcome, Attorney General Sunday.
It is an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just excited to be here and excited to talk about the important things. So thank
Well,
you.
wonderful. Before we get started, though, let me do my due diligence and let you know who is here with
Okay.
us and members. In fact, I think I'm going to do a column soon to reacquaint people with members of our editorial board, especially since we do have new members now. And I will give the first spotlight to Sam Pimentel, who is our new youth member from Dickinson College. And we have Gloria Merrick, who, of course, everybody knows with the Latino Hispanic American. Say the name of the whole thing: Hispanic American Community Center. Go ahead.
The Latino Hispanic American Community Center.
Got it. I got it.
Wonderful.
And we have Vinnie Portsline here, who is a very strong voice and advocate for people with disabilities. We have Saeed Onal, who is a businessman, quite successful, and who's an advocate for immigrant communities. Reverend Sandy Strauss is here with us. Everybody knows her too. She recently won an award for being such a strong advocate of social justice issues. And you know, Evie De Jesus. Have I missed anyone? We may be joined by some other members as they come in. I will let you know. But with that, let's just get started. I want to turn it over to Attorney General Sunday. Attorney General, we invited you here because you're new and you're stepping into a new job. You clearly have new ideas about what's going to be done. So lay out for us and for our community, our readers, just what you see now. How do you see things changing, and what will be your priorities from in your office?
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here with you. I can't tell you how appreciative I am. I'm on I think this is week 7, I believe. And, it's been a very busy 7 weeks. So to begin with, for those of you on the board here that haven't spoken to me previously, I just want to just kind of give you just a 1-minute overview. And that's obviously, I'm from Central PA. I grew up here. I was born in Harrisburg. I joined the Navy when I was 18, went away. I came back. I worked at UPS on 19th and Paxton Street here at the Harrisburg hub for almost 8 years through college and law school. I went to Hack, went to law school at night at Widener, met my wife. She was born in Sri Lanka. She moved here when she was 2. And we met at an internship at the end of law school, actually at the UN. And she came back here to Central PA. And I started as a law clerk for a judge in York. And then I went right into the DA's office. So I've been a career prosecutor. For 4 years, I was a special assistant United States attorney where we did large scale drug trafficking cases in York. And so just in a nutshell, that's who I am. And that's what brings me here. The things that are very important to me, and I mentioned this all throughout the campaign, and I haven't stopped talking about it. Even to yesterday, I was in Pittsburgh, and I'm going to talk about it until I'm blue in the face. And that is my philosophy of accountability and redemption. You have to hold people accountable. Accountability is a crucial part of public safety. But at the same time, we must, as a society, embrace redemption for people that have been held accountable through the criminal justice system. And there's a few areas that I want to talk about because my hope is that I can use my voice in this space really to move the ball forward on a few different issues. The first one is with regard to behavioral health. We have an absolute total behavioral health crisis in America and in Pennsylvania. As a prosecutor, I saw firsthand the impact of undiagnosed and untreated mental health issues and the impact on crime, on their lives, on citizens in the community, on taxpayers, on everything. And I think we have a duty to identify ways to increase access to behavioral health treatment. And we can talk all about that separately. I'm sort of trying to give an overview here, if that's okay. So in addition to that, obviously, and combined with that in a lot of ways, is the issue of addiction. And so oftentimes people have co-occurring diagnoses where they have behavioral health issues and obviously substance abuse issues. A lot of that stems from the same place. And I think it's crucial that we, again, do everything we can to make sure that we increase access to substance abuse treatment, not just for people in the street, but also in our prisons. I think that's very, very important. And that ties into a third prong of this with regard to the redemption side, and that is the reentry component. I saw this firsthand, and I'll tell you guys, I mean, I saw it when I was in the Navy. I saw it when I worked at UPS, but magic happens when people become employed and when they have career jobs and they realize that they have, the power and the ability within themselves to change their own lives. And they can do it. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it change lives. And the data is overwhelming that for the people that are returning home from incarceration, that if they become employed, the odds of recidivizing decreases drastically. And 95% of everyone that goes into prison is coming back out. And the individuals coming back out, we want them to be productive members of society. And so I have, a background in this in York County when I was a DA. I mean, we worked very hard with the Reentry Coalition, where we work with businesses in the community, with service providers, with nonprofits, to the point, and I'm very proud of this, one of my last acts as the elected DA was seeing the opening of our Reentry Opportunity Center, which is located actually in our prison, where people could start doing job interviews and the hope that they can start doing job training before they leave prison. And so those are three areas on the redemption side of this that are absolutely crucial for public safety, because if our communities aren't safe, nothing else matters. And that is, and that goes to trauma for children who see crimes of violence, trauma for children who see their parents overdose, who have to call 911. And so those are the issues, that I ran on. Those are issues that I think will, if we can embrace them, those are bipartisan issues where we all can work together on, where we can create outcomes, again, for society. And so I'm just sharing with you three major things that are important to me. That's, on the other side of it, when we talk about accountability, in the AG's office, we do so much work going after the drug traffickers, going after people that are child predators, that try to find our children, especially on social media. And we could probably have a whole nother session on social media and the impact of artificial intelligence on social media and the negative impact on children and families. And so that's just an overview of things that came to my mind while we're sitting here. And I don't know, my guess is that will probably result in some questions. So
that was a very good overview, but I'm glad you also touched on social media, because I know one of the things your office does, I think is Jeffrey Miller, I believe, goes around, Jerry Miller, and speaks
Jerry
to
Miller.
I brought him to speak to the Nativity School boys, because we have and he talks about the danger of being online so that they can understand whatever they're out there. I hope that program is continuing, that you're going to continue to feed into the community and educate our folks about social media.
I'm telling you right now, not only are we going to continue it, but odds are high that we're going to be vastly increasing it.
Whoa, okay, all right, that sounds good.
I can tell you, as a DA and as, more importantly, as a dad, what our children face with not just social media, but with the internet.
Yes.
It is a world that, and I know we're all I think there's a couple young people, we're all young. There's a couple younger people on here that probably have experienced this themselves. But the internet can be an extremely dangerous place. And so many people are on there trying to take advantage of our children, not just our children, but seniors in our community. It is unbelievably important. And now with AI, the I'm going to say assaults on senior citizens in particular through scams have become so sophisticated that a lot of times they run ahead of the police and law enforcement. And scams that used to be like really easy to spot have become increasingly more difficult to even identify that they're scams. And that is a huge, monstrous problem. And so the best way to deal with it is prevention all day long.
Yeah, well, I'm going to come back to that senior thing because that was something I wanted to bring up with you because you're right, fraud and scams and all that, it's off the charts these days, and truly your office really needs to be proactive in helping people identify it. But okay, my board's hands are up, so I'm going to turn it over to them. And Sam, your hand was up first, so go right ahead, Sam.
Sir. Sir, I first want to say it's an honor to have you here speaking to us today. And I want to talk more about that social media problem you brought up and unfortunately what it relates to with human trafficking. Fortunately, Pennsylvania is 9th in the nation for human trafficking. And in fact, my state representative, Thomas Kutz, even held a workshop on it. And I'm curious of what your plans are to address it through the social media problem with the sexual abuse that goes on there, and in our communities with the human trafficking rings that unfortunately do exist.
That's an excellent question. I appreciate it very much. And I want to let you know, to start with, human trafficking is a very, it's one of the most repulsive criminal acts that I've seen as a prosecutor. And I take it extremely seriously. We have a human trafficking section in the AG's office. I plan on, that's another area you guys kind of hit on too right off the bat, that I plan on reinforcing, for lack of a better term. Human trafficking is so insidious. And one of the reasons for that is because of the nature of what human trafficking is. It's not just what people see in the movies, right? Like Taken or things like that. I have seen it firsthand as a prosecutor in situations where people, like, so let's say you have a drug trafficker and they have a whole bunch of, we'll even say juveniles, men and women, they become addicted to drugs. And then those drug traffickers then use those clients, for lack of a better term, to get them addicted. And then they bring them to the places they go. And it becomes so sad that I can't even begin to tell you. So to that point, very simply, number one, we are going to focus as much as possible on the actual people that are making money from the human traffickers, because oftentimes every time that's what fuels this industry are people that are willing to pay money for these services. And so we're going to do what we can to go after the people that are making money and people that are paying to have this done, that are fueling this economy. At the same time, we are going to do what we can. I want to increase our victim services in working with trafficked individuals to help them to get the help that they need, the services that they may need. Human trafficking is tied into a lot of other crimes as well. So, for example, a lot of times we identify human trafficking rings through long-term drug investigations. So we may have a drug trafficking investigation, and what you have to do and what we are doing is training law enforcement. So when they come in contact with people that are victims of human trafficking, it's something they can identify, and then we can work to get to those victims and help them. Very simply, I'm acknowledging the seriousness of the issue. And even in my budget, so shortly after taking office, I had to immediately start preparing for my first budget hearings. And I received many questions on the topic of human trafficking. And so it's very serious. I'm going to ramp up our efforts with regard to human trafficking, build upon the good work that was done by Michelle Henry before me, and just continue to make sure that this is a priority for law enforcement in Pennsylvania.
Very good. Thank you. Just to keep you informed who's in the room, we have been joined by Jeffrey Lord, David Dix, and Rajette Harris, who are also members of our board. But I see Reverend Sandy Strauss has her hand up. Go ahead, Reverend Strauss.
Well, first, I want to say I really appreciate the efforts to work toward redemption for people who have served their time and all. It's something that was near and dear to me when I was doing advocacy, still when I was working for the Pennsylvania Council of Churches. And I also appreciate the work on human trafficking. But my question right now, I want to express what I suspect is on the minds of an awful lot of Pennsylvanians these days, and that is, what is happening with our personal data? There are invasions of databases like Social Security, IRS. And for those of us who are, well, one, I'll say I'm somewhat dependent on Social Security. Those are things that are critical, and I'm wondering if you plan to do anything about that. I'm seeing action in other states, but I have not seen anything here in Pennsylvania, and this is something that could stand to affect and hurt an awful lot of Pennsylvanians.
Right. Well, I appreciate the question very much. And so to begin with, obviously, and I'm not quite sure, we're going to kind of take that in a couple steps. Okay. The first one is protecting our privacy and protecting our data is absolutely crucial as citizens. That is something that I take very seriously. It's extremely important. And it's something that I know the entire Attorney General's office takes seriously as we go about our day doing our work. With regard to other states, what I can say is this, a couple things. Number one, there are many, many ways to achieve outcomes. And one of the things that I like to do is make sure that what I'm doing results in the best outcomes to protect Pennsylvanians. And so we are in the process in my office of identifying and assessing every issue that you've just brought up. And so to that point, as we assess it, as we observe it, as we research it, as we talk to stakeholders, as we talk to senators, congressmen, congresswomen, everybody, we are going to do everything we can to make sure that we protect Pennsylvanians' data. Okay. And I think to your question, some people want to see performative action. And what I mean by that is they want to see me scream and yell and do a tweet or whatever, an X tweet, whatever it is. But have always, I have a lot of pride in the fact that for me, I don't mind being the boring AG. Like, I want to work behind the scenes, and I will file lawsuits if appropriate. But you have to make sure that it's done right, and it's done correctly, and it's done in a manner that has the best outcome for Pennsylvanians. And so that's my answer very simply to that question. I mean, I take it extremely seriously, not just for myself, for constituents, for Pennsylvanians, for my parents who rely on Social Security. I mean, my dad is 81 and my mom's 80, and I am very, very close with them, and I know the world they live in. My dad's a retired teacher. I mean, so just know that that's very serious. I take it very seriously, and I appreciate the question.
Thank you. Vinny, I think you had your hand up next.
Yes, hi, thank you for being here. As I was listening to job trainings and interviews for people who are incarcerated, which I totally agree with, but it reminds me of President Trump's DEI talk. And I'm wondering how your office will enforce civil rights for people that are marginalized. They may be discriminated against more because of Trump's talk about planes falling because of DEI. So I'm wondering how your office will enforce civil rights to happen and to be maintained. And also about immigrants, the way they're being hauled off and mistreated. I wondered what your office is doing about those things.
So to begin with regard to civil rights, I mean, we are going to do what we've always done in here, just like I did as a DA. We have a civil rights section. That section is something people I work with every day. We have our chief of our civil rights section, Corbett Anderson, been here for I think like 6 years at this point. And I'm supportive of everything that he does now, just like he did before. I don't really know quite how to answer that, other than we follow the law. We follow the facts and the law in here. And it's something that I think is critical. So I'm not sure really, I'm just not quite sure what else to say to that. But I mean, we obviously will enforce all of the laws like we would under any other circumstances.
What I'm thinking about is, yes, you can enforce the law, but what happens if the law was changed by someone like Trump? Will we stand up to bullyism from the upper part of the government when we know it's the wrong thing to do? For example, mistreat people.
I mean, what I'm going to say is, I mean, just to address the premise of that question. I mean, I've been a prosecutor for 18, going on 19 years, and I've spent my entire career standing up to bullies. That's what I've done my entire career. I've stood in courtrooms. I've prosecuted murderers. I've prosecuted people, domestic violence murderers. I've prosecuted people from all walks of life. And so very simply, I'm going to follow the law. That's my job. And, you know, I can't hypothesize as to what that would even look like until, I mean, it would even happen, because like, I think a lot of people, you know, I mean, I just don't even know what that law, I mean, I guess if there's a law that's changed, we can come right back on here and have this conversation again and talk about it. But what I don't want to do is just, you know, guess, for lack of a better term. I mean, I'm going to protect Pennsylvanians. I'm going to protect the law. My job as the Attorney General is to follow the law. That's what it says in the Commonwealth's Attorneys Act. And that's very important. I mean, and I just want to piggyback this question into another answer. And that very simply is, you know, when we follow the law, and, you know, it puts our legislators in a position where if you don't like the law, then they have to change it. And so I'm not a legislator, you know, I'm the Attorney General. So, but I appreciate the question.
What about the executive orders that aren't really making sense? But do we have to, Pennsylvania, do we be independent of that and secure our civil rights in spite of dismantling? For example, going into our personal information, firing people, we can, Pennsylvania, say no?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I mean, to begin with, you know, a lot of actions taken by the executive government are actions that are taken, you know, that they, so that's kind of a really broad question. And I don't know exactly how you want me to go about even answering that. I mean, the reality is that, you know, there are some executive orders that are done, be it this president or former presidents or maybe presidents in the future, that people may disagree with that are lawful. There's other executive actions that people disagree with that are not lawful. I mean, it just depends on each individual act. You know, I'm in week 7 as the Attorney General. And with regard in particular to the indirect costs for NIH funding, I immediately got on the horn, and I've met with colleges and universities. We're in constant communication. I have worked with our senators, both Dave McCormick and John Fetterman, to make sure that we are getting our voice heard where it needs to be heard. And what happens sometimes is people think that when you file a lawsuit, that solves the problems of the world. It doesn't. There are some times when it does, but most times when you file a lawsuit, it ends communication for purposes of negotiation and for advocacy. And I want to be able to make sure that I advocate and negotiate with everything I have available to me, okay, to make sure that I can achieve the highest outcome for Pennsylvanians. And so that's my answer at this point. I mean, I work with everybody. I mean, I know that, you know, there are some, you know, you may, and I might be wrong, but you might have assumptions about me. And it's important to understand that my entire career has been serving every single citizen in my community. As a DA, I worked with literally every citizen. I didn't even know what half the people's political parties were to get things done. I've worked relentlessly with our Black Ministers Association on so many issues. And so what I would ask of you is to not paint with a broad brush with me. And because I work with everybody. And so I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that there may be things that worry you. But I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to work with everyone in the community and identify ways to move the ball forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was a good exchange to try to clarify some things. But Rajette, your hand is up. Go right ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, Attorney General. Thank you for joining us. My question kind of fits in perfectly with what you just said. But if you covered this in your opening remarks, please let me know since I was a few minutes late. But my question is, can you explain why it was Governor Shapiro rather than you, as the state's Attorney General, that sued the federal government over, the $2 billion that were frozen to help PA residents? And I'm just curious what that legal process is that determines who takes action in cases like this. And do you anticipate getting involved in similar situations in the future?
So in Pennsylvania, the way that it works is the governor can file lawsuits on his own. I mean, there are millions of different legal lawsuits that are filed for a million different reasons. The Attorney General's office, obviously, I have my statutory framework of what the attorneys in here do. We have a huge, and people often forget about this, we have a huge criminal justice component to this office. It is absolutely crucial. I've mentioned in my opening remarks before you jumped on about my desire and my passion for addressing behavioral health, for addressing substance abuse, for working towards reentry, for helping with reentry, which is near and dear to my heart. And so there's a lot of things going on. The way the Commonwealth Attorneys Act is written, very simply, the governor has a right to file suits. The governor, I think, he has over 400 attorneys that work for the state. And oftentimes, and historically, there have been scenarios where, the governor might file suit on an issue, the AG might file suit on an issue. There are times where the AG and the governor may disagree on an issue and part ways on it. I mean, there's just a million different scenarios that exist. And so very simply, Governor Shapiro, who I do everything I can with to work well with, and we work every day on issues, that was a decision that he made with regard to wanting to file that lawsuit. I mean, that's really what that comes down to.
I just have one follow-up question, if I may ask. Is there a reason why you didn't want to get involved with that lawsuit to have those funds unfrozen?
I made it very clear in the very beginning that we were still assessing everything. We were looking into the impact. We were looking on whether or not those funds were going to be unfrozen. And so everyone moves, to be honest, at different paces for different reasons. And so he just made that decision. And, I respect his right to make that decision. I respect, as governor, him wanting to make that decision. And so that's what happened.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeffrey, go right ahead. You have to unmute, Jeffrey. Unmute. Mm-hmm.
Is there something, and first of all, thank you for being here and taking the time to speak with us. Is there something when you came in that surprised you, that you didn't think about or you didn't expect to find, or what was suddenly a new thing that you had no idea was coming down the pike?
So I appreciate that a lot. To begin with, and I'm not sure if you were on at this point in the beginning, but I think I'm in week 7. And when you come into an office, there's a lot of, obviously, you have to have a transition. And so there's a lot of work being done to begin with jumping into the office. Right away, I found out that I would be testifying in front of the Appropriations Committee on our budget. And so I had to immediately begin prepping for that. And so, I appreciate a lot of the questions that were asked here by different individuals. And, I had to be in a position to testify to a $144 million budget within a few weeks. And
Wow.
And so we spent a lot of time with the entire office working on that, preparing for it. And so that was a really, to be honest, I view it as it was an opportunity. It was a great experience because it put me in a position to really understand the inner workings of the office in a way. And so I view that as a positive thing, actually. I have spent the vast majority of my time working on the issue of access to healthcare and hospital closures. And so I immediately had to jump into that issue. We are working 24/7 on identifying ways to keep the Crozier Hospital open in Delaware County. We have tremendous issues with regard to the sustainability of certain hospital systems. And so, that's one thing that from day one has been on my plate, and it hasn't gone away, and it's not going to go away, because we have to do everything we can to make sure that everyone has access to healthcare. And so I would say that hospitals and healthcare have been at the forefront of my days since I came into the office.
Just on that note, do you have any concern that the at least talked about cuts to Medicaid might adversely affect those rural hospitals that you're trying to save?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Medicaid's a crucial, critical component to the life of millions and millions of Pennsylvanians. And so that is clearly a concern that I have. Absolutely.
Okay. I think maybe it might be good to step back here and just do that kind of fundamental check-in question as you're good at doing, here's what I believe. But I wonder if you might be willing to simply share with us what your beliefs or your thoughts are with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that something that you still value, or is that something you believe we've gone too far with? No answer is wrong. Just tell us what you think.
So I think that, I'm going to go back. I want to go back in time. And as a district attorney, I valued diversity so much that we actually created a training in the DA's Association on something called procedural justice, and training attorneys on why it's important to have, for example, prosecutors, police officers that understand and represent communities that they serve. I don't know what to tell you. I'm married to a Sri Lankan. I value diversity. I think diversity clearly is a critical component of our society. And, when I was in the Navy, when I was a young man, when I was 18, I was on a small ship, and it was one of the smallest warships the Navy has. It was called a frigate. And, our ship had people on it from every single component of American society. And, we didn't even think about the things that separated us. We had a common mission. We worked together every day to achieve common goals. We were part of each other's lives. We were part of each other's families. And those were my formative years. And so that was, the way that I lived my life. And I did so, I'm 49, and it's not going to change at this point. So I don't really know what else to say to that, to be honest.
Well, I think you've said enough, and I thank you for taking the time to address it, to let us know where your head is at in all of this. The other question, does anybody else have any other questions? Because if not, I'm going to, okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Evie.
Thank you, Joyce. Attorney General, we see across the country a lot of Republican AGs pushing back on sanctuary cities and their willingness to work with immigrants, undocumented immigrants, and their willingness to provide sanctuary. Can you dive a little into your position on this and how you might handle, and it might come up here in Pennsylvania, we have several cities that are declared sanctuary havens. How do you see yourself handling this issue?
So, it's interesting because there was another question earlier about other people around the state doing things. You just asked about, Republican AGs doing things. It's important to recognize that we're Pennsylvania. And, I view my job through the lens of Pennsylvania. and my job through the lens of Pennsylvanians. And I just wanted to make that clear to you, because I think we've gotten to this place, and I will answer your question, by the way, but I just want to kind of frame this out a second. We've really gotten to a place societally where, you have, groups that kind of just band together and do things for solely partisan reasons. Okay. And I want you to know that I view my job through the lens of the Pennsylvania Attorney General and, the facts in the law. What are the facts in the law in Pennsylvania? How does it impact Pennsylvanians? And I just want to make sure that that's something that I said, because that's how I handle myself, and that's how I always have. And so to that point about sanctuary cities, quite frankly, I value immigrants. I value immigrants, their relationship to us as a society, the impacts. My father-in-law is one of the patent holders for a drug that's helped millions and millions of Americans, and he grew up in a village in Sri Lanka. So I'm not, so just know that you're talking to someone who understands the value from people that come to the United States. Okay. That's very important to understand. And so in that vein, we're going to just have to see where this goes with regard to the federal government and laws. I have been in constant contact with the Philadelphia mayor, Sherelle Parker. We're developing a relationship that looks like it's going to be really good to find ways to collaborate on a lot of these issues. The reality is when you have people that are here illegally that have committed crimes of violence, they're going to have to be deported. That's something that I think most people would agree upon. But what I will say to you is I certainly, assess these issues as they come up based on the specific facts of them and the actions that are taken at the time. I'll give you an example. I saw in the news, this was like last week, I think, there was a video of an individual being taken into custody. And I don't want to, misstate the facts here. Someone taken into custody. And I think that it may have been, I don't know if it was ICE. I'm not sure who it was. And there was a lot of commentary in the public, like, hey, this person was just walking down the street, minding their business. It turns out that person had a warrant for a sexual assault. And so I'm saying that not through the lens of the actions of either that person or ICE. I'm saying it through the lens of let's get our facts together and make sure that they're correct before we determine the appropriate course of action. That's all. So I think that, I'm the type of, I collaborate with everyone. I work with them. And I'm looking forward to working with all of our communities to identify ways to make sure that, we move forward as a society.
Sam, I think you're, Evie, did you have another question or you want us to come back to you?
I'm back, yeah.
Okay, Sam, why don't you go ahead?
So I want to go back to what you mentioned earlier in your opening, which was about mental health and drug issues. And you addressed it from the adult standpoint, but I'm curious because unfortunately in a lot of our schools, you have opioids, you have fentanyl, you have marijuana. And I'm curious how you plan to address this and what lens you want to take that through when it comes to rehabilitating kids who may have already been addicted on drugs or keeping these drugs out of our schools to begin with.
I think that those are a lot of different questions unpacked. I'll try to stay focused on this, but very simply, a lot of who we are is based on our life experiences. And, through my time as a prosecutor, I watched people commit crimes that were low-level crimes that had severe mental illness. I saw people that ended up in prison, and if they would have gotten treatment along the way, they wouldn't have ended up in prison. I saw very serious crimes that if you look back in that person's life, you'll find at some point they had an interaction with the criminal justice system through like a behavioral health lens, and nothing was ever done. And as the years went on, I just really started to, it affected me. And I felt terrible for these people. And I just wondered what their lives would have been like if someone would have stepped in and said, hey, here's outpatient mental health treatment. Here's something you can do. Here's someone you can talk to. And then as the years went on, and I started watching the impact of social media, I started watching online bullying happen. I just realized, like, we have to find a way to deal with this. And I'm glad you're answering this. You asked me this question, especially as a very, very, now there's a lot of young people clearly on this call, but as a very young person, the reality is that there are certain problems we face as a society that can't be fixed quickly. There's some things that are outside of the political cycle. They're not, you can't in 2 years or 4 years fix behavioral health. You can't, you can't at the end of the day go on social media and say, hey, I handled behavioral health today. That's not a real thing. You have to have the courage to move forward and make a lot of noise about it and identify issues at work. My heart breaks when I see lost opportunity. I feel that as a guy who, wasn't the most directed youth, that joined the Navy when I was 18 because I felt that I needed discipline and I needed to experience, those type of experiences. I'm blessed and grateful every day for where I'm at. And I'm saying this solely through the lens of the fight is worth it. Meaning, what do we have to do to identify ways to have more access to treatment for people with mental illness? I think that when you talk about juveniles in particular, the stressors and the challenges that young people face now is vastly different than when I was young. And having seen that again as a prosecutor, I know what's out there. And so juveniles have a unique, the law obviously is unique when we talk about juveniles, but I think that the fight is worth it. And so everywhere I go, I talk about this issue. I'm trying to make a lot of noise about it. People send me ideas, and I have ideas of my own that we're going to look at moving forward. And so that's really, the gist of my answer to that question.
Great. I think that was very, very helpful. The other thing, just to follow up on that, there is such a shortage of mental health professionals, especially for dealing with teens. I know in the school I mentioned to you, Nativity School, which is mostly Black and brown boys, middle school they're living with gun violence on a regular basis.
Yep.
And the trauma. In fact, there was a few years back a kid killed in their parking lot, but there were no psychologists to be able to help them. So all we could do would be to come up with chaplains who would come in. But I'm wondering, do you have, it may not even be your job. Is there anything that you see that can be done to help the mental health aspect of this? Behavioral health, you say, but this is clearly,
of course.
What, even as an advocate, that would, would be helpful. So talk a little bit about that, because there just aren't the professionals there to step in.
This is an area where, even though, this is a place where I can have a voice. And, when we talk about mental health for children, the trauma on children with regard, when you start adding in, to your point, violence that they see, addiction that they see in the world around them. There's studies that show that there are some children that have higher levels of trauma than people returning home from military service, based on the things that they see and the things that they're around. And so I think one of the things that I can and will and am doing is speaking to people that have the ability to, like health systems. Let's start health systems. Talking to leaders in health systems, boards of health systems, speaking to our legislators, speaking to our governor, speaking to anyone that'll listen, and let them know that this is something I'm not going to be quiet about. We have to find more access to mental health counseling for these kids. We can't build a society that is full of trauma without at the same time providing the resources for our children to be able to work through it. And so, I'm open to any idea anybody has. There are a lot of things out there that can be done that are data driven, that are evidence based. And a lot of them are programs that are specific to regions. This is not a one size fits all situation. Something that works in Philadelphia may not work in, Tioga County. It's all different, and you have to identify those systems. and make sure that the help is there. And so this is very important to me. This is personal to me, and I'm going to be a voice for mental health the entire time I'm an elected official here as the Attorney General.
You know, one thing that might be helpful is if you identified places where things were working, where there were good, so that people could replicate those. Maybe your office could at least be that bullet point. But here, it's working over here in Scranton. You might want to try it in Harrisburg. That might
maybe, and maybe you could, when I do that, and I actually have already done, as we progress through this, maybe you would give me the opportunity to return to the board here and talk about some of these initiatives that we are seeing that work, and talk about ways that we can move the ball forward as a society on this issue.
Attorney General Sunday, you have an open door to this board. So whenever you're ready to talk, we're ready to listen. Okay. This is great. Any other questions? I did want to zero down in just to make sure we're not confusing what you're saying, which to many of us has been music to our ears, to be honest. I'm an opinion writer, so I can say opinions. But the diversity thing was I think for most people here was very welcome to hear that you're committed to that. But there are two other aspects of that are a little bit different, and that's inclusion and equity. So I don't know, do you have a different take on that? How do you see that fitting into this panoply here?
Listen, I'm not, I don't really, and don't hold this against me, please, but like, I just honestly don't know really what the, there's been so many definitions of different things that exist that have changed by the day, by the week sometimes, that, I don't really, what I can tell you very simply is this, that I believe that we obviously have to embrace all of our community. I don't know really how else to say it. Like, we have to embrace everyone. Everyone has something to offer. Everyone, I want to see, everyone be successful and happy and healthy, and families, whatever that looks like, raised in a safe and healthy way. We have, people in this office from every walk of life that you could imagine. And so I listen to what everybody says. I want them to have a place and do well. And so, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but that's just how I feel. I don't know.
That's all right. I got it. I don't think if there are any other questions that let us know. Go ahead, Evie.
This is actually for a story. So I want to I have you here, so I'm going to take the opportunity to ask you this. Next week, we mark the 5-year anniversary of the first lockdown as a result of the COVID pandemic. On the 23rd, March 23rd, 2020, Tom Wolfe issued the first orders to close schools and other public places. And in the following days, it was one after the other until we were in a statewide lockdown. Knowing what you know now, in hindsight, and having lived through that, and then the 5 years since that, and knowing what you know of how many people in the state reacted to vaccine mandates and also mask mandates, are there lessons that you think would inform the way that you might handle a similar situation? Were we to have another pandemic, were we to have another crisis that would require that level of state official action?
Yeah, that's a amazing question. And I appreciate it tremendously. COVID, just, as we're getting to know each other here, my son was in kindergarten during COVID, and that was just an unbelievable experience in so many different ways for us. And I know that that's impacted, a lot of things in his life. And I was the DA during COVID, elected DA. So to begin with, one thing, and I go back on my own personal experience, I think that it is crucial to build relationships and to collaborate and to be in a place where people can have, normal human conversations with each other, and not judge each other based on, what our feelings are, and listen. I discovered as a DA that, well, I mean, as a person, but when I was DA, I saw it firsthand, that the worst thing you can do in the world is tell any group of people, and this applies to a lot more than COVID, but just tell people, like, you don't matter. Like, your voice doesn't matter. Your opinion doesn't matter. That's the worst thing you can do to anybody. And so I think that when situations like that arise, and again, it's even smaller situations where when you get together and you explain to people why you do what you do, and they understand like why decisions are made, they have an opportunity for feedback, even if it's not, even if it's disagreed by everyone. It puts people in a position where they're far more likely to accept outcomes, even if they disagree with it. And so I remember as a DA, I was frustrated because there was no any type of communication with the district attorneys about the law enforcement side of this. There was no communication with the police chiefs. There was no communication with anyone involved in law enforcement about the orders at the time, what they were going to be, how they were going to be enforced, what our suggestions were. And I can tell you right now, I know that there would have been a lot of input that came from law enforcement that would have been tremendously helpful for the good of the order and making sure that we as a society together navigated a lot of those issues. And so I think the biggest takeaway from my COVID experience, and again, like, thank you so much for asking this question, because I think a lesson to be learned for everyone is that we have to break out of the barriers around us and talk to people that may disagree with us, people that may not like us, people that may not live like us, and have these conversations so that when serious things happen, it's not for the first time people staring at each other. It's a way of life to work through challenging issues together. I think, and I know I guess I'm kind of half rambling, but I feel very strongly about that. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. So in York, we have this tremendous program that started probably 8 years ago, which is the police chiefs and clergy. And when we started it, the purpose of it was to build relationships so that when things happened, it wasn't like, hi, my name's Dave, what's your name? It was, I know Dave. I know about Dave's family. I know what makes him tick. We all know each other. And that was the best thing we did, because in 2020, during when some cities had riots, when that whole summer was happening, we worked together every single day to communicate in our community, to understand. And because of that, we didn't have riots in York. And to this day, relationships were created that, I mean, we're friends. Like, we have very serious issues that come up that we have real conversations about, where I've walked away saying, uh-oh, I would think I was wrong about that one, and where they've walked away and people have said, wow, Dave, I was thinking about that, and I think there's something we could do a little different next time. So very simply, let's treat each other like humans. Let's all talk to each other. Let's find ways to work together. And I think communication is the key to victory, especially in a world where there's a lot of distrust of institutions, of each other. And that's the way that I'm going to handle myself. And that's the way I always have. I'm not, and for the people on the board here in this conversation, like, I'm not perfect. I don't profess to be. I mean, I'm going to make mistakes. Every single person makes mistakes. But I promise you that I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can. I'm going to listen to anyone that wants to talk to me about any of these issues. I will be more than happy to sit down one-on-one and without a camera on, and just have a conversation and talk all about it. And so that's my answer to that. And I wish you the best of luck in distilling that into some type of quote for your story.
Thank you.
Because I don't even know how you're going to do it, to be honest.
Sounds like it to me. It sounds like he wants more communication with the stakeholders. If you're going to shut stuff down, bring as many people around the table as you can so that they at least feel they've been listened to. Is that about right, Dave? I don't know.
Joyce, do you mind if I call you Joyce?
Yeah, you can call me Joyce. Yeah.
So in the future, when I talk about something for an hour and want to distill it, can I just call you and can you help me with that?
I'm used to it. But I mean, that's what I heard when I was hearing
I
that.
appreciate it.
Part of the thing is people felt left out of the decision making. And so
That is
it sounds
correct.
like
That is correct. Yes.
All right. Well, there's one final thing, unless somebody else has a burning question. I do want you're doing, I think you're doing good work with the young people in the social media, and I hear you're going to do even better. But what is it about the elders, the people who are young like me? What are you going to do to protect us from fraud? Okay, what are you adding anything more to that? Okay, let me hear
All
that.
right.
That'll close on that.
All right. So number one, because of AI, it's become even more difficult for people to identify fraud. It's become, even to the point where voices are mimicked, images are mimicked. The amount of attempts to defraud seniors is now at levels that no one's ever seen. Pennsylvania's got one of the highest populations of seniors in the country. And I always use my parents as sort of examples for this. I know people try to steal money from them literally from morning till night. And so to that point, we have to absolutely ramp up our efforts on prevention. I mean, it can't be a once, and we're talking right now internally about ways, and I'm working with AARP, with a lot of different organizations to identify ways that we can blast the message out relentlessly in a manner that seniors can understand. I mean, I know, for example, if my dad had to download an app on his phone, he'd throw his phone out of the window. I mean, it would never happen. He wouldn't even know where to begin. And so we have to learn how to communicate in ways that seniors understand. And so that's part one, ramping up anything we can do with regard to prevention. Part two is doing everything we can to make sure that people have access to our fraud prevention hotline. Okay, people need to know about that. We've been able to help prevent crimes. We've been able to speak with seniors before they've done things to prevent something bad from happening. And that's something we need to do. The third part of this very simply is every chance we have possible, we want to do everything we can to identify and prosecute the bad actors that are scamming seniors. That is crucial. It is crucial that we do that. We are going to ramp up our legislative discussions with our friends across the street about manners in which can we identify ways in which we can use legislative action to maybe strengthen some areas. I was asked, I don't know, I'm probably not supposed to say this yet, but I was asked by National Association of Attorney Generals to serve as co-chair of their bipartisan Consumer Protection Committee. And that is something that I agreed to do. And so we will officially be putting that information out in a few weeks, but and that's an area where I hope to learn from my colleagues all across the country, regardless of their political affiliation, what we can do together, ways we can work together, ways we can do things to help everyone in our communities. And so, in a nutshell, that's that's critical to me. And I think I saw someone type in a note or pop up. I mean, to ramp up our media, TV PSAs, right? Like to do everything we can. You mentioned Jerry Mitchell earlier, who does a great job in a million different ways. And so we want to make sure we have enough people to get out and to get out and have those seminars as well. Someone mentioned earlier, I apologize, we're almost done, I know, but a lack of people. So you're right, we need more people to work in the area of mental health, but we also need more people to work in the area of for example, senior centers. We need more people to work in those spaces, helping senior citizens. With regard to Medicare, things of that nature. I mean, that's crucial for seniors to be able to live. As Medicaid's, in certain circumstances, that could be seniors as well, low-income people in our community. I mean, it's crucial that they have access to healthcare, because if they don't have access to healthcare and they're having health issues, be it physical or mental, then that increases the likelihood of them being ripped off. And so all of this stuff, it all is tied together. And so that's my answer to that question.
Well, I thank you. This has been a quite full hour. We've discussed a lot of things, and thank you for being quite forthright and open in your answers. I just, on behalf of this editorial board, I want to thank you for taking time, because we know you're a busy person. But again, I repeat, anytime you want to address us about any issue, we're all ears. With that, please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again. Thanks to your staff for setting this up.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
All right.
you.
Bye-bye, everyone.